with this amazing panel we've got here today. We're talking about the very relevant subject of AI data readiness. So it's being recorded. We'll get a link tomorrow. We've already shared your locations in the chat. Go ahead and do that if you'd like. That kind of makes things a little more fun as we go. So my name is Patrick Vinton, and I'm the CTO of Analytics8, and I'll be moderating our awesome panel today. So Analytics8 is a consultancy that's been around for almost 2 decades, and we help companies prepare and operationalize AI through services such as data strategy, platform modernizations, AI-assisted analytics, and agentic automation. And we recently commissioned and produced a report. You can also grab a link to that too. But this report talks about a bunch of things after we interviewed over 100 data leaders across North America. We're going to be talking about some of the common themes that we discovered in our research about AI data readiness. And while the answers are often bigger than the tech, tech does play a big role. And that's why we are joined with this panel today. We brought in representatives from Databricks, DBT, and ThoughtSpot, companies that are in the forefront of AI and data readiness and moving AI endeavors from experimentation to production. And so with that, let's have some introductions, please. Anjali.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anjali, and I'm the VP of Product at ThoughtSpot. I have been in the BI and analytics space for almost a decade. So would love, excited to be part of this webinar and, hoping to learn from it as well.
Thanks.
And hey, everyone, I'm Russell Christopher, Senior Director of Product Strategy. I have been a data guy since the very beginning. My first grown-up job was supporting Microsoft SQL Server 6.0, back when you could still get a manual with the product.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Couture. I'm an architect on the Databricks side, working with startups across different industry verticals. Been in the data AI space for close to 8 years now. Started my career at IBM working in the warehouse and transactional database space. Made my way over to Snowflake and worked with a couple of enterprise accounts there. And then eventually came over to Databricks, where I've been helping startups scale and leverage Databricks to its fullest potential. Within Databricks, I help run a few of our Gen AI workshops that help customers kind of speed that time to value for their AI initiatives. So very excited to be part of the panel here and start the discussion.
So it's awesome to have you guys here and be, since you have a lot of firsthand experience in real world environments working with customers across many different industries and sizes and things like that. So you're going to be kind of the voice of the solutions and of the tech world. But we kind of look at our research report as the voice of the customers and what are they seeing. And so one of the things they said was 85% of them said that architecture, poor data hygiene, and siloed systems are the biggest impediments to their AI rollouts. It's a pretty big number. Wondering if you guys agree with that. So there's a poll that we're going to be presenting. Yep, should have popped up by now. Do you believe that those are the factors that are your biggest impediment in rolling out AI and kind of making the pivot from experimentation to production? Okay, I think we've got quite an ample time for people to answer there. So let's jump in and talk a little bit more about the report and what we're going to talk about today.
Cool. I just wanted to share the results of the poll real quick, Patrick, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And if anyone had a comment on that as well. So mostly everyone answered yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So even stronger than our research group. So that's a lot. So
Yep.
Luckily, that's some of the subjects we're going to be talking about today, and excited to dig in a little bit deeper. So as mentioned, we surveyed over 100 data leaders from a variety of companies across a variety of industries and sizes of orgs. Again, we'd encourage you to read this in detail. There's a lot of good stuff here. We can all glean some insights from here that kind of affect how we approach some of these data projects, specifically the ones that are geared for AI. Let's go ahead and jump right in. One of the things that we saw in our research was that, plain and simple, most people are saying that the data is not ready. And only 14% say that they've achieved full data readiness for AI workloads. 1 in 6 companies said less than 10% of their data is ready today. So, I mean, that kind of pulls against some of the things that people are saying that they're doing AI. So what's the difference here? So they're doing AI, but they struggle to move beyond experimentation. So, Russell, or Anjali, I think it was Russell. I think you decided you wanted to start here.
Yeah.
Yeah. How does your platform help organizations turn AI ambition into something usable and repeatable in practice?
Yeah, you actually stole my thunder with the report there, because that was kind of what I was going to say. From what we've seen, most orgs get stuck in this kind of like, oh, how would I put it? I'm going to do a brown bag during lunch and show you this kind of like neat, interesting thing, but I can't get it into production because there are things missing. You're trying to build AI essentially on top of data infra that wasn't designed for it. So, assuming that you've gotten down that road a little bit, there's still some things that you need to look at. The first is context. AI models are incredibly needy in that aspect. They need tons of structured and unstructured context about your data. dbt happens to be actually quite good at that. You can think of us as a giant context repository. They also need tools. An example of that might be the ability to hit MCP to actually grab the context so you can write smart SQL rather than SQL that just kind of works but often kind of fails. And then finally, error correction. You need really robust validation to catch the mistakes that agents are bound to make. So to speak to your report, like you absolutely need to make the investment in data infra. If you don't, you are going to fail in not so many words. And then after that, context, tools, error correction.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with Russell on this one. And you mentioned, Russell, a little bit about business context. What I have experienced, and we have launched AI initiatives right from the beginning. We have worked with so many enterprise customers working with their data. Now, we do understand that the problem is not the AI models, but it's really the data feeding these models. They're not clean, consistent, and more importantly, they're not enriched with the right business context. Now, what we've seen is infrastructure, we do a lot of spend on that. Do a lot of spend on prepping and cleaning the data. But adding the business context is often an afterthought. And it's almost like to an AI experience, you add a PDF file as a context or an analyst report at the end when you're trying to consume it. And this process doesn't scale very well. Some of the areas that we've been investing into as ThoughtSpot is this. So we do have a product which turns data preparation into an operational and repeatable process. You know, it allows analysts to blend the data together from different sources, be it CSV files, etc. It allows you to apply transformations and also create a governed and reusable data sets. And in future, we also intend to add LLM-based semantic context to these transformations. Transformations have language. When you write a SQL query or you do some transformations, it has a language and it can be converted into some business context. So, and these can then power the AI experiences. But in addition to this, what we also do is we make sure that we, integrate with best in the class in the world, like dbt and Databricks Unity Catalog. If the data sets is standardized upstream, ThoughtSpot integrates really, really well with it, and it preserves the semantic context and passes it, to the consumption layer. So yeah, so that's how ThoughtSpot handles it, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. And then I'll jump in, kind of give my perspective from the Databricks side. Quick disclaimer, all kind of views are my personal views, but I think many companies also, what I hear is that they're doing AI in some shape, form, or fashion. But what I see across industries is a familiar pattern, right? A lot of early momentum, a lot of POCs, pilots, and then projects get stuck in what I jokingly call like POC purgatory, right? And that AI readiness report, Patrick, that you brought up echoes a lot of what I'm hearing in the field as well, right? Inconsistent data architectures, poor data hygiene, siloed systems, all those are usually the culprits or the biggest blockers to getting from experimentation and into production, right? Um, at the end of the day, teams can't scale AI if they don't have an integrated data foundation and a way to measure quality and improve over time, right? And I think also that's where Databricks helps, right? The Lakehouse brings your data, your analytics, your AI workloads together under one roof so that you're not constantly moving data between systems or having to rebuild a lot of the same pipelines for every new use case. And that's also what's powerful about partners like DBT and ThoughtSpot, right? Is that they help eliminate those silos by bringing logic to the data and making trusted data products easier to build, to share, and to consume across the organization. Second part of the question touched on usability and repeatability, right? And I think it really comes down to sort of two key pillars within the Lakehouse, and Jolly kind of hinted at one of them is Unity Catalog, right? And it's essentially that governance layer that puts guardrails around the whole AI system, right? Your data, your features, models, and who can access what. It gives you consistent permissions, lineage, and auditability so that the same controls that you use for data also applies to AI, right? Including what an AI agent can do and what it's allowed to do. You can think about it as under this UC kind of governance framework. AI and models become first-class citizens that are governable, not just living in someone's notebook on a side project somewhere, right? And then the second pillar is kind of ML flow, right? Which is what makes the AI lifecycle repeatable and reusable. It standardizes how teams track experiments, how they package models, and how Gen AI artifacts or how they get versioned as artifacts and how they get promoted through environments with full traceability, right? So if you put it all together, right, a platform like Databricks helps customers move past that POC purgatory by fixing the foundation, by unifying the entire data estate, and then making AI governable, making it measurable and repeatable from pilot all the way to production.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so interesting conversation. We talked a lot about context, and then, we kind of took it all the way from context, but also like operationalizing that. And there are technological answers to some of that. I mean, obviously there's things in the way you organize your team and your data team and all of that. But let's dig in a little bit more on the semantic layer and the role of that and semantic definitions. We were talking about business context, but how does that overlap with, augment, let's talk about the semantic layer if we can just a bit and its role in AI.
Who would you like to lead, Patrick?
Yeah, Russ, let's start with you on that one. And I know, yeah, everybody's going to have something to say on this because you guys all work in close tandem on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in quickly because I think Anjali probably with their stuff kind of should own this. But to me, semantic layers are a must-have. And AI without a semantic layer is like you hire this brilliant and very expensive consultant, and then you don't onboard them, right? So they're technically capable, they're contextually lost, and then you wonder why they're not very effective for you. And so that's kind of like semantics. That's AI without semantics. But I know Anjali and ThoughtSpot had some really cool stuff around that.
Yeah. No, I think one thing if I have to say about semantic layer, AI without semantic, and especially in the world of data, is like pattern recognition. You can recognize the pattern. But semantics and the semantic layer is actually what turns it into decision intelligence. I'll give an example and, kind of my experience working in this product as well. So we started investing in, LLM-based or natural language way of asking data questions early on, like, in 2023. And to talk about the experience, a bunch of our customers were not, so the data that they were working with, the business language and the data language were literally not matching up. Because, just to give an example, when we do our business meetings, we call, ACV, which is the, account contract value. But when you report to board members, you talk about revenue. Now, so where does that definition reside? Nobody knows whether revenue has to be translated to ACV. And that is a similar problem that we started seeing with our customers, which is their business language and data language did not match at all. And semantic layer actually makes or helps users do exactly that, which is how can you bring the definitions? How can you bring the meaning to the data that you have and make it more, decision oriented rather than, data oriented? So that is how I will, like to put it, which is semantic layer is actually very, very crucial for the, consumption layer, because that is where business decision makers are making decisions, and they think and see the same thing now versus earlier they used to see data, but think in terms of business terms which were not in the system.
Got it. Understood. Yeah. And then there's also, I mean, great feedback. Yeah, and you guys have been doing it for a while. And there's also it's the reinforcement from human feedback, getting that. So, you can do a lot of stuff up front. You can talk about building this data platform, but that's rarely ever done. I mean, you've got to have some sort of operational process in place where you
Yeah,
can
exactly.
respond to human feedback. Maybe you
Yeah.
and then Daniel can talk about some of the reinforcement activities that you guys support in your
Yeah.
products.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just continuing on the thought initially that I put forward, which is adding context as an afterthought. Um, And that's a problem because you're not operationalizing the business context at scale. So, for example, if I have a metrics layer, or I have certain definitions stored in CSV file, or so not CSV, but a PDF file, etc., I'm adding it at the end. Now, that feedback is definitely coming, but it's not consistent. For example, if I have another colleague and they have access to another Confluence page, there is a mismatch. So human in the loop is important, very important. But what is more important is how do you do it, in a repeatable and operational way so that it scales very, very well. Um, yeah, Dalian, feel free to speak next on this, but you get the idea.
Yeah, no, I think that you touched on a couple of like different key points, right? I think semantic definitions are one of those topics that very often gets overlooked, and they're usually the difference between an AI demo or an AI project and an AI system that people actually trust, right? And that actually gets used in production. Um, I remember I've heard the phrase kind of garbage in, garbage out. I think under the lens of semantic models, it's more like inconsistent definitions in, unreliable answers out, right? And that's how I kind of like to look at that crucial piece of the semantic layer. And Jolly, you also touched on this, right? But when it comes to core metrics like revenue, like customers, like churn, and those kind of metrics are not standardized, um, AI doesn't have a stable foundation to reason on, right? So instead of giving dependable answers, you end up with results that vary depending on where the data comes from. And I've seen that kind of firsthand working with different customers. Um, so I think when it comes, yeah, when you think or when I think of semantic layers under the context of AI, it really comes down to three things, right? The first one is semantics creates some sort of shared language between business and the data, and I think Russell was kind of hinting at that, right? It acts as that translation layer that turns raw tables into consistent business concepts, so that when someone asks a question in natural language, the AI isn't guessing, but rather it's anchored to an agreed definition, right? The second one that I think semantic layers kind of come down to under the context of AI is semantics are what's going to make AI responses consistent and repeatable, right? We hinted at that on the first question, but without a semantic layer, each team ends up with a slightly different definition or different logic, and then AI systems that don't get utilized because of a lack of trust. And then the last kind of pillar there is semantics plus governance are what I would say makes AI trustworthy, right? So in Databricks, semantic definitions sit on top of a governed foundation so that AI, whatever agentic system you have in place, is using the right metrics with the right permissions, with lineage in place, with auditing, right? And we talked about UC in our first question, but really that's where Unity Catalog becomes critical, right? It makes those definitions enforceable, not just documented. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of like pattern I've seen working with some of my customers. Russell, I think you wanted to kind of share a couple of thoughts next.
Yeah, yeah. What Daniel said got me. There are a couple of things I heard that got me very excited. So I virtually raised my hand. Um, you touched on the concept of repeatability, and that's core in a number of different ways. It's it, it, it when you use AI, it's not very comfortable when you ask the same question 3 times and you get, twice you get the same answer, and the third time, not so much. And often that's because a metric layer, Anjali mentioned having a metric layer. A lot of those, unless your semantics are like really, really tight, it's more probabilistic versus deterministic. So those specific metrics must be the same every single time. Otherwise, your agent, your co-pilot, whatever, of course, is going to hallucinate. And one of the things that also is important is being able to actually, once you have, from a process perspective, we've been talking a lot about technology here and not quite as much about process. Once that metric has been agreed on, you need a way to get it into all of the other systems. And there's some of the participants may be aware of this, but if not, open standards. Databricks has always been behind open standards, DBT as well, ThoughtSpot. There's a new project called Open Semantic Interchange. It's a vendor neutral spec that essentially allows you to trade metrics between systems. So whether a metric was created initially in DBT and now we want to get it into Tableau or ThoughtSpot or whatever the case may be, all this stuff can flow back and forth. And in fact, here at DBT had our own solution. We called it Metric Flow. And we've actually open sourced that as sort of a reference implementation that you can use with this. So semantic layer, no matter who you choose, it's all good tech from a technology perspective. Make sure that you have the processes in place and make sure that once you define the right answer, you have mechanisms that will actually get that same definition out to all parties, so we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
it's
no,
bigger. I think
go
it's
ahead.
bigger than just the consistency across. It's also the governance. So yeah, we're seeing some questions come in. If you wouldn't mind, I mean, the chat's great, but if you wouldn't mind trying to centralize them in the Q&A, it makes it a little easier for us to follow. But um, either one is fine ultimately. But yeah, there was a question about governance and doing things at scale and consistency. So Anjay, I know you had a thought coming, but let's try to put answer a little bit more in the context of like, well, I'm having trouble. I'm gonna my words, not the person who questioned it, is like, how do I, data readiness sounds great, and you invest in a lake house approach or a warehouse approach, and you're building up all this stuff, but like, how do I articulate the value of that to somebody upstream? And we've been kind of saying it indirectly, but it's the repeatability of this, it's the governance of this. That's where this all that's why this all matters.
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
you can run cowboy and point it at things, but not if you want the consistency that Daniel mentioned, not if you want to have the feedback that Russell and Anjali mentioned. And go ahead, Anjali. Sorry, keep cutting you
Yeah.
off.
No, I was reading the questions, and I was reading Gaur Shukla's question, and I would like to address that. It is related to governance as well as making sure the business context is added at the right time. And one of the challenges he's speaking about is that data collection. At the data collection phase, it's very hard to bring that business context. But I think that is the real game changer. So the challenge that I'm seeing is that businesses have to have to provide the context, which is use case specific, but at the same time, they need to make sure that it's repeatable. And we have spoken about repeatable and operational to a large extent, and how we can incorporate processes as well. That's the key, and that is where your semantic layer can play an important role. And semantic layer also plays a very important role in governance, because you can define all that governance rules, security rules at one single layer. And OSI obviously helps in that, because you have open standards, so multiple systems can actually come together and talk to each other without creating duplication, or without kind of breaking the flow. And that is where I think the industry will go towards, to solve that problem of consistency and repeatability. We need to make sure that we are aligning to one layer which is governed nicely, and then it flows to the other systems. It has to be well connected. And that's my key message, that how do you ensure the entire loop is connected from data preparation to semantic consistency to insight consumption. So that is key to me.
Yeah, great questions. Keep them rolling in. This is good. So, I mean, I think we may have just kind of alluded to this already, but what do you guys see? You see a lot of rollouts. What separates a successful organization and successful rollout from ones that are not? Like what are they doing to make sure that they have return on these investments?
I'll start in on that, and I would say it's that we're going to be repeating ourselves a lot here. The difference isn't better models. The difference that we see is that successful customers are systematically investing in the, admittedly unglamorous work of data quality, of governance, of process and workflow design. I forgot who actually coined this, but it's sort of a ratio that gets talked about sometimes where it's 10, 20, 70, 10% on the algorithms, 20% on the actual technology. And here I am, a technology vendor saying that, but I'll just say it. And then 70% on people and process. So they just invest differently. Um, Secondly, they prioritize ruthlessly. And while AI is amazing and super shiny, and you want to chase all of these scenarios that you think you can apply AI to, the most successful companies aren't doing that. Like they establish an ambitious like vision, multi-year typically. They know what they're going to go after, and then they do like half of it. So choosing fewer projects and really planning to overinvest on those is much better than trying to do everything on the face of the planet. It doesn't work. And then finally, there was a question in the Q&A on this, and this is sort of near and dear to my heart. Um, Again, they build the infrastructure first. And we all, as data leaders, understand how important that is because we're the ones who actually see what happens when you don't do that. We feel that pain more than anyone else. Uh, your CFO or CEO may not think data infrastructure is all that sexy, when all is said and done. So I would put this firmly in the people and process bucket. You have to learn to manage up a little bit and reframe what data infrastructure actually means. It's not just like the cost of doing business so that users can have access to data. You sort of reframe it more as like the control surface for AI risk, or it's a multiplier on every single AI dollar that you are going to spend. You can use an example of what was this, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Unity Technology had the data quality issue. They ended up giving like $110 million back to customers, right? When you start talking about compliance and risk, and that is what data infrastructure buys you, like avoiding that. We want to make our customers happy, and Unity did, so they gave money back, but who wants to give money to the government because you get fined because of compliance issues? Uh, if I were going to build my own house, you know, am I going to build a $5 million house? Well, I wouldn't buy a $5 million house, but I wouldn't build it on a low value foundation. If you're going to invest that much money, you have to put the foundation in first. Otherwise, you just shouldn't be building a house. So I'm going to stop there. Now I'm feeling all preachy. Zip.
We like preaching. We like strong opinions here. So, it's the data infrastructure and it's all the hygiene and like kind of the grunt work to build it. But then there's the other side you got to make sure it scales. I mean, one of the best problems to have is what you've got takes off and it gets wide user adoption, or you embed it in something customer facing. Um, all of a sudden, usage is going to take off even more. So, Daniel, I know you've got some strong opinions on this and how Databricks can speak to that challenge.
Yeah, and then I might take a little bit of a different approach than Russell. Agreed with some of the stuff that he was sharing. And I think this is when the conversation shifts a little bit from like AI as a demo to AI as an operating model, right? And what I've noticed is that the companies that see real ROI aren't necessarily the ones kind of using the fanciest models, but rather they're the ones that build the foundation and feedback loops in place so that AI can actually run like a product in production. Um, if I think back, or if I look at some of the customers that are doing this well, right, it usually comes down to a few consistent behaviors. Um, they standardize on one governed data and AI foundation, right? So they stop building one-off pipelines for every team or every use case, and they consolidate data, enforce governance, and treat AI assets like first-class citizens, so that every project, whatever it may be, starts from the same trusted source of truth. Right. Benefit of that obviously is that it removes the friction of security reviews, data duplication issues that are going to be kind of fundamental going into any AI project and seeing real ROI from an AI project perspective. Um, Second, they also operationalize quality, not just deployment. Right. They don't ship an agent and hope it works, but rather they define what good means. Whether that's accuracy, safety, relevancy, latency, costs, and they measure it continuously. I hinted at MLflow, and this is where MLflow becomes critical, right? It provides evaluation, monitoring, drift detection, and feedback loop that turns production kind of usage into a continuous improvement or development cycle. And then last, right, they pick some of the organizations that see real ROI and tangible results, pick high value, repeatable use cases that and scale that, right? Not prototypes. So the winners start with use cases that are tied to business KPIs, whether that's sales productivity, support deflection, underwriting cycle times, whatever it may be, right? They prove kind of impact fast and then iterate on that. So they reuse the same architecture patterns across the org, the same governance model, the same semantic definitions, which we were talking about, the same evaluation kind of harness, instead of reinventing the wheel each time. I guess ultimately, right, it comes down to, or the difference kind of lies between the teams that treat AI like a product, right? And that's kind of like the key, by governing the foundation effectively, by measuring quality continuously, and by scaling kind of repeatable patterns that tie to real business value or KPIs. And that's kind of like a common denominator I've seen with the customers that bring those use cases to fruition and into production successfully.
Yeah, great answer. But I think maybe there's even I think maybe one of the most basic things that you overlooked is, and this is kind of related to a question that came in, it's like, how much do we need to be thinking about scale from day one? Well, maybe not. I mean, like I said, an awesome problem to have is it takes off. So, but I think when you're developing in something like Databricks, a POC is built with one architecture, is basically the same architecture as something that goes live. You just scale it up. It's a few mouse clicks away. You're not doing anything fundamentally different to build an AI solution to the moon versus doing a POC. And that's where I think where we've seen in Analytics 8 customers make mistakes is they are very rigid in their approach, and they're like, all right, here's a point solution, and I'm going to build to that, and I'm going to build to the moon just in case. Whereas the successful things that we've seen is invest in your platform, do something generic. Because guess what? You don't know exactly what the workloads are going to look like. You don't know what the compute engines are going to be. You know, for a customer facing one, ThoughtSpot maybe is probably one of the best compute engines out there. And Angela, you probably don't like me talking about it as a compute engine, but it is a consumer of the data platform that you've got. But it could be something else. There could be something else that comes in there. And it's not even necessarily a ThoughtSpot competitor. Maybe it's a different workload entirely. And so you want to invest in that platform that is conducive to plethora of workloads and go from there. And also that foundation be able to scale up in a few mouse clicks. You don't
No,
want to have
I
to
like
be
to,
reinventing and refactoring as you go.
yeah. Now, I like to call this as do not treat data readiness or, invest data preparation for AI as a one-off technology project. It has to be an ongoing operating discipline. Look for tools that help you define the um, right way so that you can continuously evolve. You're continuously investing into data readiness. Is this data that you're talking about, is how related it is to the business use cases? So, to answer this question, which is, how do we make sure, or how organizations consistently operationalize AI? I would like to put it in three, ways. The first one is invest in data strategy. That is an important one. And I read your report as well, Patrick, and only 14% is prioritizing that. That's like pretty sad number, if I can say so. And more importantly, that data strategy needs to connect to data readiness and the real business use case. So you need to make sure that your business use case is connected as well. Just don't prepare the data for the sake of doing it. They prepare the data with the right context, right way, choose the right data, and for specific business outcome. So this, one of the questions was also asked about this, which is, how do we make it business specific? It is important to make it business specific, but the next step is how do you make it an ongoing operating discipline to continuously evolve that and don't treat it as a one technology project and be done with it. So that's very important. And the last piece is connecting the entire loop. I spoke briefly about it. How can you connect data preparation to semantic consistency to insight consumption in one single layer? These organizations who are leading in AI standardize definitions upstream and semantic layer upstream, but also ensures the downstream tools are integrated, deeply integrated, and they operate on the same governed data. So yeah, so that I feel is very, very important, like looking at strategy, looking at making it repeatable, and how do you continuously look at the data readiness and improve upon that, and connecting the dots between the two different tools.
Yeah, very good. We had a question come in about security. I'd love, Anjali, I'd love for you and Daniel to answer this. Maybe Daniel, you can start. But it's any advice for security and privacy concerns. So I going to totally lead the witness here, but this kind of goes back to why would you invest in a data platform and why would you invest in all this kind of rigor up front? I'm not going to steal Daniel's thunder. Let's go ahead. How does Databricks speak to that, both at the
Yeah, no,
data level and the model level, please?
you read my mind. I was working on typing some sort of answer, but I'll answer it live. And I think this oftentimes becomes also friction points for customers, right? And things that prohibits you from kind of bringing some of those AI use cases to production. For a couple of those security conscious customers that I've worked with, right? Bringing the AI models, the foundational models to the data and not vice versa is a big plus as well, right? So for customers that have security concerns and kind of want to run those models natively, having those models run under the same standardized governance umbrella that you're running the rest of your data estate is key, right? If you have some sort of foundational model powering an agent and you have that agent kind of connected to some sort of MCP server that has access to different tools, how do I make sure, one, that the data doesn't flow in and out of my governed security umbrella? But two, how to make sure that AI agent also stays kind of governed and subjected to the existing governance rules. So I think that's very valid concern. A lot of times that I've seen AI projects sort of being slowed down, a lot of the times it's because of that. And those are some of the, I think, ways that customers are tackling some of those security concerns, is kind of shifting the paradigm a little bit and bringing the foundational models to run natively on top of the data, not vice versa.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Daniel. We have seen a large financial services companies who do not want to use LLMs or any, for that matter, any infrastructure which is sitting outside in the cloud. That's a big problem for us sometimes. So we have obviously, we have built VPT, which is making sure, very similar to what Daniel says. How can you bring everything where the data sits and not go outside of it? So yes, we have solutions which allows you to basically it's about balance. How much can you, how much are you okay, using the models that are consistently trained on a regular basis, or you can bring it in and train it yourself. We allow bring your own LLM. So that allows you to literally train the models on your own data, and it is not talking to the internet as much. But the challenge then is that, it's not improving on a regular basis. So yes, so you have to maintain a balance for sure. But a lot of customers also go ahead and choose different type of implementations for different use cases. So you have to create a balance around that and proceed.
Right. Yeah, that was a different angle. You guys took, and rightfully so, a different angle than I was thinking. You were talking more about where does the LLM live and how are you making sure, because I know this is a valid fear of a lot of people, is who sees my questions going out there? Is that how is that being used to retrain the model and stuff like that? So you guys talked about bring your own LLMs, bring it in within your tenant, within your environment. That's a great one uh,
Yep.
I wasn't going to point out. Go
One
ahead.
more thing that I didn't hear mentioned, so I'll, for what it's worth, again, a lot of the same thinking that you'd apply to data, you can apply to your context. So you use sort of a fetch then filter model, meaning that you have all of your context. It is tagged in certain ways, whether it's a document, whether it's actually a vector store, whatever it happens to be. And then based on the identity of the user, you can apply, if you're dealing with structured data, maybe you're using good old-fashioned RBAC, or maybe if you're in Unity, you can do ABAC, or if you're really, into context, you can do actually context-based access control, CBAC, to really just decide, okay, Patrick gets to see everything, all of the good stuff. Russell, he's only semi-trusted. So we're going to kind of keep his neighborhood relatively smaller. And that's a good way where you don't have to like try and re-roll your model and stick all of your business knowledge in the model where everyone has access to it. You can augment sort of the basics as you go.
Yeah,
That's
bingo.
yeah. It's also easy for me to say that I don't have to do it myself, but that is a classic pattern that people use.
Yeah, bingo. And I thought, actually, I thought that's where Daniel was going to go. I'm glad he went the other direction because I for, forgot about that extremely important part. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the Unity catalog has that name. I mean, that's the entry point for everything, whether it's a SQL query or it's an agent running the SQL query or interrogating a document. So one thing that we haven't talked about really any is unstructured data. That was another thing that we found in our report was unstructured data is a key weak spot. 57% rate themselves effective in managing structured data, which seems a little bit high, frankly, based upon, but that's what our respondent said. But only 41% say it's the same for unstructured data. Um, Frankly, from what I've seen, that number also feels a little bit high, partially because it feels like the conversations that I'm seeing until we kind of nudge them back, but the conversations we're having with our customers is this is an AI workload that's based upon structured data, and here's another one that's based upon unstructured data. When I think we need to be thinking about those things together. Those it's not one or the other. Um, Danny, I really love the Databricks approach to this. Maybe you can explain how Unicatalog deals with different types of data formats and through to support some of these workflows and kind of speak to some of this weak spots that we found in our data.
Yeah, no, I think very valid point. I think with the rise of AI being a little bit more prominent across different enterprises, the ability to tap into documents and unstructured data becomes even more crucial. Like think about how many customers have a knowledge base that's in some sort of PDF or Word document. So the ability to merge that and kind of marry that with tabular data, it's data that might be stored in Delta tables is a huge value, right? Um, the Databricks approach, right, is very much kind of consistent with what we're talking about, like whether that with PDFs reside in a customer managed volume or in a Databricks managed volume. The idea is to throw Unity catalog on top of that so that even those files are not accessible by the broader org, but by the right personas, right? Also, and from an agentic point of view, right? If an agent should have access to a specific volume so that it could do some sort of analysis on any of those PDFs, unstructured documents, that's also kind of like the beauty of Unity Catalog. There's also agent breaks, which I'll touch on kind of briefly. And under the covers, a few of those agents interact with documents, right? So people kind of sometimes describe like some sort of, or want to implement some sort of talk to your data experience for end users, where that data typically resides in some sort of tabular format. Agent breaks, specifically the knowledge assistant agent, allows you to talk to your documents, right? So it's an out of the box capability where you don't have to worry about doing the development, setting up the agent, but it kind of works outside or out of the box. You point it at a specific volume where you have PDFs or Word documents. And the backend sort of Databricks does like the parsing, the indexing of some of the information, some of the text in those documents, and then you can kind of chat with those documents. So I think customers are seeing the value of data that traditionally has been kind of sort of quote unquote trapped in those documents, and are utilizing more and more tools to try to unlock the value out of those documents. But that's how I kind of see it from my point of view on the Databricks side.
Yeah, that's great. Big fan of Agent Bricks and all the different flavors of it underneath. But the key thing there is it's controlled, and governance is controlled at the data layer. It doesn't matter if it's structured or unstructured. And again, as Russell said, we're going to repeat ourselves a lot. It's not just because we're broken records, but because we believe it with conviction. You've got to invest in that platform in order for things to work well. Otherwise, you're going to have to repeat things over and over and over, dependent upon your workload. And in this case here, with Unity Catalog, you've got a single governance layer for both structured and structured data. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what Daniel said. And one of the reasons why I feel there will be a big shift in how we manage unstructured content as well, to make it more. My challenge with the unstructured content is more about repeatability, which is, as the business evolves, these are static documents. How do you maintain the versions? How do you, consistently use, so just imagine your organization. When you join an organization, you start writing a document. Now that could be referenced in another document, but someone else who takes over my role tries to write yet another document. And it's like, you see that, there's a whole lot of unstructured data which are connected but still not connected. And that's why I feel like there is going to be, because of this AI evolution, I think there will be a shift in how we manage unstructured content as well. I think Databricks is playing that role already to make sure that and it's actually leading that way for sure. A lot of agents, like we have an agentic solution spotter, which can integrate with MCP servers, whether it is an enterprise search tool or whether it is something else, to bring that necessary unstructured content at the consumption layer. But the key is, how do you make it more governed? And that's where I'll see most of the movement in the unstructured industry, data industry. So yeah.
Sure. That's what we see from a tech approach, but also what we see as a consultancy. You help people not just implement tech, but how do you change your organization and change your operating model? Is a lot of the challenges that you just mentioned. We've kind of figured that out as an industry for structured data, like which one is the source of truth.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a simple cut and dry answer. Sometimes it's like, well, in these situations, it's this data set, and sometimes it's this data set. How do we govern that? How do we have change control on that? Who are the data stewards for that? Like we're already pretty well rehearsed on that. So we're kind of good at that. We're trying to apply some of those principles now as an industry, operationally, to unstructured data as well. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from unstructured data as well. And we've actually gone the other direction. We've applied that. So who has access to this folder? Who has edit privs? Who has view only? So we're seeing this kind of cool cross-pollination of handling these things operationally. Are we there by and large? I don't think so, which is why I thought those numbers felt a little bit high based upon our respondents, but I think we're getting there. Um, I think something that I'd like to point out, especially in regards to unstructured data, and this again goes back to the importance of a platform. You know, a couple months ago, RAG was all the rage. That was how you got your context. Well, now that's one of many ways of getting your context. Now there's MCP. Next year, there's going to be MCP 3.0. There's going to be something else. That's why you got to invest in your foundation because you don't know what computes and ways of interacting with it are going to change. It's changing really, really fast. So don't bet everything on one particular approach and invest in a platform that's interoperable, that can exchange the data. We've all talked about that many times, and you're never going to be fully future proofed, but this is where you have the best chances of it.
Yeah, plus one on that. I mean, people are doing uh, amazing things with cursor plus MCP, and then whatever MCP happens to be pointing at. I can say with 100% certainty the second cooler than cursor comes along, it will get dropped in a New York minute, and everyone is going to run to that new thing that's even better. So being able to be fleet of foot in that way is super important.
Agreed. Agreed. Claude plus MCP for the win. I see in the chat. Yeah, that's it for today for sure. MCP was a big that was a big advancement for the industry as a whole, and really it supports what we've all been saying on this panel is what does that actually do? It fosters interoperability. It's in whatever form or flavor it comes in, that's the key things to making these things successful. Um, Questions are slowing down. Any parting thoughts anybody wants from anybody on the panel? Anything else that we want to cover? Any tips?
Yeah, I mean,
Uh-oh, did we lose Russell?
Looks
It was
like
gonna be it was gonna be a heater too, I can tell you.
uh, yeah, no, I actually was looking at some of the Q&A, and I think one question caught my eye, and let me address that. I think they're talking about when you start off, you have to prioritize speed over, making sure it is built
and
for scale.
again, if
I'll send him a note privately.
Yeah.
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 Go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, this is a very interesting concept. I think my answer to this question is you always start with POC. Like when we started building, or when we build a product ourselves, we start with a small POC. The idea with building that POC is to ensure that you are testing testing your waters with what is feasible, right? And but we don't forget that once we have to take it to production, we need to ensure that all aspects of scale is taken into consideration. So what we are saying is not always think of scale right from POC stage, but as soon as you're trying to move away from POC, start thinking of scale and don't rush into going into production. I think that is what this team has been, kind of hinting towards. Sorry, Russell, we lost you, so I thought in meantime we will answer one question.
no, that was perfect. I appreciate it. Um, yeah, I was just gonna beat the dead horse one more time and say that AI is not a data science problem. When all is said and done, it should be treated as an infrastructure and process problem. And if you approach it that way, you're generally going to be successful.
Well, very good. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Enjoyed the questions coming in along the way. Thanks to our panelists for their time and their contributions. Very good. Thank you everybody for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We're also going to be emailing the recording and sending some resources from Analytics8 and DBT Labs tomorrow. So just be on the lookout for that. Thank you again so much for all the panelists for joining, and everyone for attending. Thank you.